What is good?
Just getting right into it.
Bang. No Big Co, just me and the Wayne, ready to roll.
Bye-bye.
This one's brought to you by Thrive Fantasy. Go ahead and download the app. Get that in any store that you're going into. Download the Thrive Fantasy app. You can play a little contest action with prop bets, basically against 20 of like the top assets in the league, whether it's Josh Allen 25 completions versus Saquon Barkley, all-purpose yards X, all those kind of great things. We've enjoyed thriving. You should enjoy thriving. If you do, go ahead and hit that promo code, all caps FFD.
The FFD.
I just wanted you to come in there with the.
It's a good site to go and look to see what Vegas is saying these players are going to get around stat wise.
If you're questioning sit start stuff, you can go check that player over under. And these are all on Thrive, it's all the biggest players, but you can go find those other numbers elsewhere for maybe some flexible production guys, some lower end guys. But yeah, we've had a good time playing Thrive. They got a good product over there. Jags got their first win. I think the Jaguars sponsor some Thrive action. So just a little plug there. All right. Today, the word of the day is volatility.
Oh, Jalen Hurts. I thought it was Jalen Hurts.
Well, whatever you want to go with. I can't remember maybe a more volatile fantasy asset from week to week as far as like...
Fantasy asset?
As far as like, whether the stock, if he was a stock, was up or down. It just seems like it goes crashing down and then flying up. The fantasy points have not been an issue at all. He's the QB4 through week 6. But it just seems like, he has a good game. Maybe they win, catches a little up buzz. Everybody's like, oh, Jalen Hurts. Then, has a bad game, especially on a Thursday night in front of a national audience. Fantasy points are good, but boom, crashing down.
At least he did come on at the end, which people might forget the beginning. People forget the middle part. Whatever was recent.
I don't think you forget that first half performance. And I mean, he ran a couple in, but that Zach Ertz play was a good play. But I think Philly doesn't forget. I could tell you that.
That's true.
So really we wanted to come on here and kind of do, should you be trying to find that window of volatility and ride the lightning and go ahead and sell? He seems like a sell to me, but let's discuss here for a second.
All right.
So to me, the Eagles can be and have been known as a fairly aggressive franchise. We saw them spend a second-round pick on a quarterback when they had what many already considered to be the franchise guy, so that left you scratching your head a little bit, although Carson kind of had a little ups and downs here and there, couldn't stay healthy. So you thought that maybe that was a problem. Carson has turned it over a fairly league low currently on his new team, so good for them. Missed a little bit of time, but
mostly playing most of the snaps.
Mostly playing pretty well. But the Eagles themselves have really positioned themselves perfectly to make a bold move and to try to find that next big-time franchise quarterback, while all the while figuring out if this guy who they spent a second-round pick on can lay claim to that spot. If that should happen, then they could spend this capital that they've been accruing on other assets around the team to build it around them, which would be nice, but that also puts them in a really good position to make a pretty bold move, whether that be in the draft, which, right now many consider this probably a weak quarterback class, but we hear that, almost every year, but it could put them in a position to potentially go after Deshaun Watson that they've been rumored around, or an Aaron Rodgers next year when the draft picks don't really have anything to do with that. They could bolster around Aaron Rodgers, maybe trade some other pieces, but say Aaron Rodgers wants to leave the Packers, which many speculating maybe Philly's the landing spot. I don't really see that necessarily, but it's not that it couldn't happen. And then of course Russell Wilson, unhappy.
You think Russell's out of there?
I don't think. Yeah,
But he told Aaron Andrews.
Yeah, I think Russell's probably out of there. But anyway, so the capital that they do have is a Dolphins first round pick that they did with that trade up, which they're 1-5 right now. So that looks fucking awesome. And then they traded, obviously, Carson Wentz to the Colts. And if Carson Wentz plays 75% of the snaps or 70% of the snaps and the Colts make the playoffs, then that pick turns into a first-round pick. And, of course, they have their own pick.
Best case scenario for Eagles is Carson plays all the snaps and they miss the playoffs.
Right. I guess. I mean, doesn't really matter.
And if you called it right now, if you ended the season today,
right,
it'd have 3 top 10 picks.
And it, that could very well come to fruition. I mean, the Eagles had a good come from behind win to beat the Panthers, but get beat up by the Bucs for the most part. Like, that score was not indicative of how that game went at all. Mm-hmm. Cowboys beat them up, and just they've looked pretty up and down. And it seems like the Eagles every time they win. Obviously you get a little Jalen Hurts uptick. There's some buzz, and every time they lose, he's basically it's getting closer and closer every time he loses to him not having the job as the Eagles, because that pick's getting better and better for the Eagles. And
so you think best case scenario they just draft another guy. Worst case scenario, they trade for Deshaun or something like that, and the job's done. But you don't think that's sort of the stem.
If they draft another guy, they're going to spend high capital on him. So Jalen Hurts is definitely not going to be the starter. Like, either way, this works out. Every time they lose a ball game, and the Dolphins aren't any good, and all these things keep trending in the direction.
You're saying Hurts probably not going to be the Eagles' quarterback next year.
That's kind of what this all boils down to me. Again, volatility, I think, is the word here, because it just seems that every time he wins, maybe he helps himself a little bit and worsens the Eagles' draft pick. Capital goes down a little bit, but every time he loses, he gets closer to having a foot out the door, in my opinion. And I think the Eagles are letting him have an audition here, and I don't know how great it's going for them. I mean, I'm not going to be.
Well, they're 2-4.
It's been up and down for him. He's looked pretty good at times, and then at other times you see what a lot of people saw at OU or Bama, where it's, kind of one read, looks around, and then kind of looks to run a little bit, maybe a little bit too quick with leaving the pocket, and maybe it's an otherwise clean or decent pocket that other guys would kind of slide around, move around in. And, the accuracy is not where it needs to be for an NFL level quarterback.
No, I mean, he's 21st in completion percentage with 64.8%. And making some bonehead plays. He slid down a yard short of the line of scrimmage instead of throwing it out of bounds, saving yourself a yard. There's little things here and there you see him making these mistakes.
I'm not looking to kill this guy right here. This is not what this segment is necessarily about. But he's a young guy, and he's young in his NFL journey here. I like the man that he is. I just have never been super sure about the quarterback. And maybe he will and probably should be afforded another chance somewhere, but it seems increasingly more likely that he'll probably have to be somewhere else besides Philly, and probably have to earn a job or wait for somebody else to be injured. He does bring a lot to the table, and he is pretty fun to watch sometimes. And when it's going well, it's going well. You could blame the play calling right now in Philly. I don't love the fact that they're not running the ball very much, or just kind of remove it from the game so that you don't even. I get it against the Bucs. I'm fine with it. You do it in a little bit.
Although they started to run it at the end, that's what got them back in it.
Right, but I mean,
Miles Sanders finally looked like. So
right.
Give this man the ball some more.
They have a decent backfield.
I thought that running quarterback was supposed to stretch.
Right. You have a decent backfield and a running quarterback, so I think they probably should be running it a little bit more to at least keep some people honest. But, that's neither that really hasn't happened. I'm not going to solely put it on the play calling necessarily for Sirianni and Jalen Hurts. Like they've just got to be better as a whole. The defense has kind of been keeping it in some games, and then they hung around in the Panthers game long enough to come back. And Hurts had some big plays in that. But at the end of the day, he is the QB4, so the fantasy points are really strong for Jalen Hurts. So if you're just saying, hey, Casey, I drafted this guy at a fairly reasonable price in a dynasty startup or whatever, and I'm just going to ride the fantasy points out in my lineup until he's gone, and then we'll wait until he maybe gets another shot somewhere. Might be a little while, but I'll just bury him on the roster for a minute. I guess I'm more or less saying that I was fine with drafting him where the value was. I liked it. I thought I saw a good return on the value. I just knew I wanted to try to sell him in season, and it seems like the next time that maybe there's just an ounce, a little more of positivity, I would be looking to pounce on that opportunity and sell Jalen Hurts for some sort of a piece for my team moving forward that would be maybe a little more usable full time than what Jalen Hurts,
Long
maybe able to provide you for a little while. Like, obviously there's teams that could use him and need him. And again, I'm not trying to kill the guy.
And it's not like the Eagles have done the best job ever surrounding him. I mean, they did spend high capital on Devonta Smith, but they
got high capital on Rager. They got two good
really
tight ends.
young.
They got good running backs. I mean, what else do you want, man? Like, the offensive line isn't terrible. It's, they got a pretty good defense.
Is pretty. They haven't been playing that well.
The defense has been playing really good. I mean, thought,
outside of Slay early on in the year, they were
no. The defense has kept them in just about every game that they've been in, outside of maybe that Cowboys game. I thought that defense has been playing, really well. Which, again, let me get a little bit more of a run game to give those guys a breather. And they've lost some pieces on that defense. They're going to get Lane Johnson, I think, back this week.
Took a couple mental health weeks off.
So for me, I'd be looking to try to get out, probably a must kind of sell situation when you can find the window. I'd be shopping them a little bit now, and the fantasy points are great. And, I'm pretty sure the Eagles are going to go a different direction. And, like in the Deshaun Watson case, they're basically saying how they don't want your quarterback in return. They want the capital. They don't want to take any hit on the value because you're giving them a quarterback. They just want to go get their own. Now, maybe the Eagles then, if he's not involved in the deal that they trade him in, maybe the Eagles would eventually say, hey, we paid a second, but we take a third or a fourth, or, in the case of Zach Ertz that they wanted to trade, they just moved him for a fifth. Older player, a little different, but if they're not doing any good, you might as well, get something for him. They spent a 6 on Gardner Minshew, who's there as a backup. So just wanted to shout that out there. I've been kind of wanting to talk about it for a little while here, and wanted to throw a little something together after this week. Maybe not the best week, especially because it was a nationally televised, kind of all eyes on Jalen Hurts. But again, when they look at the fantasy production,
right,
if they're not necessarily paying attention and living and dying by the sports talk radio or all that kind of stuff, when they see the fantasy points, they may just say, or some people are just a lot more believers in Jalen Hurts than others. So
he is still young and raw.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to say that he's not going to ever get another chance.
I think he'll definitely get another chance at some point somewhere. So, I mean, you're not going to totally get caught holding the bag immediately, I don't believe. And the fantasy points have been great. That being said, the on-field numbers not strong. 28th in passer rating at 37. That's a really low number. Saw he had thrown the 4th most interceptable balls per game at 3.2. So also made the 4th most money throws. So a little up and down. Money throws qualified as a pass requiring exceptional skill or athleticism, as well as critical throws executed in clutch moments. So he is an athletic guy with some skills and has made some nice throws, also thrown a lot of interceptable balls. Not a recipe for success.
Yeah, it's just been really up and down, but the fantasy points have been...
And I could cash out.
Super strong.
Sure.
I agree 100%. Like I said, I mean...
And if you're looking what you should be cashing them out for, it's hard to just say, oh, this or that. Hit us up on patreon.com/EFF Dynasty. Get access to the Discord channel. We chatted up in there a lot. And to answer a trade question, it takes context. What's the scoring?
Right.
What's your team look like? What's the makeup of the league? Where are you strong? Where are you weak? What are you looking at? And it's not just, I can't just make up trades for you. You got to have something in mind.
Right. And I think moving Jalen Hurts is going to be a bit of a grind. Like, it's not just going to be like a nice, clean, easy deal. Hey, I just sent this one trade over to him. Okay, yeah, I like that. I think there is going to be a little bit of a grind to it. Like I said, if you wanted to let that asset die on your team because the fantasy points are great right now, that's fine. But somebody else may be looking to make a little upgrade and make a run here and take Jalen Hurts off your hands because you probably weren't drafting him to be your only fantasy quarterback. Now, redraft, obviously ride that thing into the dirt and be stoked about it.
Right.
But we're talking about Dynasty here. So I'd be trying to cash out and figure that out the best way I could right now.
I like it. Short-ish and sweet. We always go longer than we want to. Appreciate y'all for joining us. If you made it this long, definitely hit me with that subby, that noti, that scribey.
And go ahead and thrive. Download that at any of your app stores and hit that promo code, the FFD. Let them know we sent you. Help your boys out.
Yes,
Catch
sir.
you next time.
Appreciate y'all. Peace.